Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, LinkedIn for Your Business. My name's Jill, and presenting today will be Ellery. He's our social media manager here at Vertical Response. Just a couple things before we get started. First of all, this is one of our shorter webinars, so the presentation itself should be about 20 to 25 minutes long, and then at the end we will have time for Q&A. So if you think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in the GoToWebinar window, and we'll be happy to answer as many of those as we can at the end of the webinar. One of the most popular questions that we get, probably the most frequently asked one, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, we are recording this, and we will have it posted up on our recorded webinars page on the help site probably by tomorrow afternoon. So if you want to go and refresh some of the stuff that we went through, or just take a look at some of the slides that we have, you can certainly do that on our help site. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you, Jill. So LinkedIn, this has been a webinar that our customers have been asking for a long time, and we're happy to be getting to it for good reason. We talk about Facebook, we talk about Twitter, blogging, other kinds of social networking, but LinkedIn is often overlooked when people think about social media, but particularly in the B2B world, but really any business, LinkedIn should maybe be considered the primary social media channel for your business. So why? It's growing quickly. If you might have heard, they went public in the last couple of weeks and had a really, really successful IPO. They're growing about a new member every second, which brings them to over 100 million members now, 40 million of which are here in the United States. Of that, you're looking at close to 20% of those members are actually key decision makers in their business. So if you're reaching out and trying to find customers out there to sell your service or product to, LinkedIn's user base is going to represent exactly the kind of people who are making those decisions. It's got a really, really great demographic for marketing when it comes to trying to identify influential membership. And you can see on this little infographic here kind of a breakdown of what that is. Nearly 70% of all users are in the 60,000 plus income bracket, 40% over 100. These are the kind of people, the kind of customers that you want to be reaching. And a couple other graphics there. Every single Fortune 500 company is represented on LinkedIn. This is the reason that businesses are more and more gravitating this way. The last thing on this slide I'd like to point out is just that little stoplight graphic. If you look, 1% of users are responsible for 34% of LinkedIn's traffic. And I wanted to highlight that only to say that you've got a user base of power users who are really getting the most out of LinkedIn. And I would like to encourage you to become part of that 1%. And I'm going to show you over the course of the next 20 minutes or so some ways that you really can become that kind of power user. And as I mentioned before, when it comes to B2B, there really isn't a better social network for you out there. And I think B2B marketers acknowledge this as well. And this study from B2B Magazine from April shows that the majority, more than any other social network, B2B marketers consider LinkedIn their main focus. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Other social networks, be them Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, anything else, are really about social relationships, right? Your friends, your family. Whereas LinkedIn is really the primary source of business relationship building. So where you might, not want to necessarily, where Facebook is for sharing pictures of your kids and dogs and things like that, LinkedIn much more represents your professional brand, and people know that, and LinkedIn's done a very good job with their own brand to maintain that. So what can you do with LinkedIn, and why is it set apart from these? For a business, it's really the best when it comes to an opportunity to establish your brand out there in the online space. It gives you opportunities to really highlight your experience, your expertise, and establish yourself as a thought leader in the space. And something, and we'll talk about this later as well when talking about building out your company page, is that you can't forget that your employees are part of this as well. And your employees represent, particularly on LinkedIn, represent a huge part of what you're saying about your brand, because everyone who identifies themselves as an employee of your business is going to be highlighted by LinkedIn as part of your business, and you want their profiles to promote and back up that branding that you're putting out there as well. It's not enough to just stop with a good company page. LinkedIn offers the opportunity to have recommendations, which are great for increasing your credibility in the space that your business is in. It's a great SEO tool. There's, if you notice, if you Google search for your own name, which I'm sure none of us are guilty of doing, more often than not, your LinkedIn profile is going to be ahead of Facebook, even your own blog. There's reason for that being that LinkedIn supports a lot of links, links back to your blog, links to your corporate website, links to your Twitter account. All these links are building up that SEO. And so by adding those links and making sure they're maintained and updated and you're using the keyword functionalities of LinkedIn, you can help build up that SEO. And at the same time, promote your other online properties, whether it be uh, your professional portfolio for designers or different service offerings out there, your Twitter feed, your own personal blog. These are all great ways to build SEO on those things as well by linking back to them through LinkedIn. Uh, it's groups become a really powerful way to do this as well. The more that you show up in online in conversations on LinkedIn, and the more your name's there, the higher searchability, so to speak, you get, as well as feeding back to that branding opportunity and establishing yourself as a thought leader. And lastly, and this is pretty much what people have always thought about LinkedIn for, is as a recruiting tool. And though it's changing and becoming more of a branding opportunity as we've been pointing to, it still is an incredibly powerful recruiting tool, and can be a great way to build your business and build your connections based on that. So thinking about LinkedIn, there's two things you have to think about. One is personal pages and one is company pages. And as I mentioned, personal pages or company pages are all linking back to the personal pages of you and of your employees. So if you're the CEO, sole proprietor of your company, your personal page is essentially your company page as well, because people are going to look to you in those scenarios to see your experience and credibility. So one thing that you have to make sure to do is to complete 100% of your profile. If you notice on LinkedIn when you're there in the edit profile page, it actually has a bar that shows where you are in the process. 80% of your profile complete, and tells how to get to 100%. Make sure you do that right off the bat. Um, some things to think about when building it. LinkedIn is a professional network. It's not the place for your beach pictures or puppy pictures or anything else. Your profile pic should be a professional headshot. End of story. That's the best way to brand yourself as a professional on LinkedIn. Also think about your headline. Make sure it's clear and concise. This is the 100 characters or so that appears right under your name in search results. Just like a profile pic, don't try not to get too cheeky. This is the opportunity to really be clear about who you are and where your expertise is. As you build out the profile, as I mentioned earlier, make sure to link back to your other online properties as much as possible. So if you have an About Me page, Facebook profile, blog, any other presence out there, make sure that those links get into your LinkedIn profile. Build up recommendations, build up your skills and specialties sections. These are all areas that are going to increase where you show up in a LinkedIn search. So if I'm out there and I go onto LinkedIn and I'm trying to find, say, an attorney in San Francisco, and I type in, San Francisco lawyer into the LinkedIn search box, the skills and specialties sections of your profile is going to be what determines whether you're in those first page or two of search results for that. Also using apps, and we'll look at what that means later, but LinkedIn actually has a powerful collection of applications that you can install. So you can hook up your Twitter account, you can do an RSS feed of your blog, you can install SlideShare presentations, lots of other things to really build up your brand within your LinkedIn page. And along the same lines there, uh, a lot of people don't realize that they can actually edit the display order of their personal profile on LinkedIn. So when you go, the default on LinkedIn is going to be to show your experience first, I believe. It starts with summary, then experience, but you can change that around. For example, on my LinkedIn profile, I have my career summary, my skills and specialties, and my recommendations up top because I think that that is more important and speaks to people looking at my profile more. If they want to see my entire work experience and online resume, they can scroll down and get to it. But you want to take advantage of the fact that LinkedIn makes it really easy to drag around different areas of your profile and make the display, and you can really highlight the areas that you think are going to be most effective to building relationships. And building relationships really is what LinkedIn's all about. So build and leverage your connections and make sure that they're quality. Better connections are going to lead to better results. So it's actually against LinkedIn's terms of service to add people that you don't actually know. But despite, or even forget about the fact that it's on the terms of service. It's good practice, right? It's just like email lists where that you want opt-in, double opt-in in most cases. You want people who you're connecting with to be expecting to hear from you. So, you know, leverage that and leverage good relationships, and you can really see how you can get a lot out of LinkedIn. Something that people often don't realize about LinkedIn is the power of the connections that you have on there. If you look down on the bottom right of this screen here, you'll see a link to export your connections. You can actually export all your connections on LinkedIn into something that you could upload into your vertical response mailing list, and all this information you can see on Amber's profile here. We've got, contact, email, phone number, which I'm sure she appreciates me putting out here.
Maybe you should have blocked that one out.
Pay no attention. I'm sure it's changed. But there's a wealth of information on LinkedIn profiles, more so than most of the other social networks, that LinkedIn enables you to export. And on the left side of the page, you can see all the different ways that you can filter these to really locate people in different industries that you've worked with and different kinds of connections. Same way that you can do that, you can filter those when sending messages. So one of the neat things about LinkedIn is they allow you to message your network up to 50 recipients. So if you have, say, an article that you think would be really relevant to your customers in the financial services space, you could go out and filter all your connections that are in financial services and send that message out to them. These can be marketing messages, links to really interesting blog posts, information. Good way to segment your audience on LinkedIn, just like you would with your email list and vertical response. Now, once you have your personal profile set up, it's time to think about your company page. And the company page is not the most robust of areas on LinkedIn, although it's getting better and changing, but there's a few areas that you should really focus on because it's not completely robust. There's two main tabs that you're going to see on company pages. One is the overview, and the other is the products and services tab. There's also a job tab as well, which if you are hiring, you should definitely be utilizing that. And as I mentioned on that second to last bullet, it's not only for recruiting, but it's a branding opportunity too. Showing that you're hiring and your job recs should really say something about your company. So think about that when you're building up that tab. But for your overview tab, you want to make sure, and we'll show an example on the next slide, but you want to make sure that your summary is really well done. Think about the copywriting on it. because the default for it, I'll just click forward for a second, the default, as you'll see up top, is they're only going to show the first 5 or 6 lines. So think about what those 5 or 6 lines say, because for anyone who's not clicking more and clicking down, it's going to be those first lines that really establish who your company is. If you're looking for content ideas, you probably already have it. If you've got a Twitter account, you can link that to your LinkedIn to every time you tweet, update your status. I would suggest thinking about this if you're tweeting a lot. You might not want every tweet onto LinkedIn, but what you can do in your Twitter settings on LinkedIn is set it up so that only certain tweets with the hashtag IN, show up in LinkedIn, and it's all automated. Also pull from your blog. And as I touched upon before, your employees' pages are just as important as your company page. So you'll notice too on the overview page that the very first thing that's shown is employees of the company. So, as we have here on the vertical response page, the employees that are showing up all have professional headshots, and you know, their profiles filled out. If you've just got a couple of employees who have no picture and just the weird gray head that LinkedIn defaults to, that says something about your company as well. So remember that and encourage your employees to stay active. And make sure that they as well are linking back to your company, including your company website, including blog posts to your company. All of those things on your employees' personal profiles are going to boost up your SEO as well. On the products and services tab, you want to make sure to utilize that. It's a pretty cool feature of company pages. You can list out, if you're selling products, you can list out every product and create kind of a mini profile for each one. And the same way with services. And one thing that's neat about it is that you can actually solicit recommendations for those specific products, not just the company as a whole. And one way to think about how you could really, try and get more traction with these is to offer people who follow you on LinkedIn special LinkedIn-only offers that are listed in your products and services. And the last thing with company pages, not your company page, but think about other company pages. LinkedIn is really great for competitive analysis and really keeping an eye on what your competition is doing from a hiring standpoint, from a content standpoint. LinkedIn gives you some great visibility into that. And looking quickly at the products and services tab, Taproot here only has services, so it says services only, but that would change if you had products. But you'll see here that these recommend and share buttons that I mentioned on the last slide. So someone could recommend this individual service or share it with someone. So if I reach out to a friend and say, hey, I'm looking for a investment advisor, do you know anyone? They could actually go to that page, that company page, and share that particular service which they're speaking to. And lastly, this arrow up here, just wanted to point out, it's not LinkedIn specific, but I like to, in every social media webinar that we do and whenever I'm talking to customers about social media, is to remember that these social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, don't have to exist in silos, right? So make sure to promote your social presence across the different networks that you're a member of. So there's no reason on your LinkedIn page why you shouldn't be telling people about Facebook and giving them reasons why, the latest news, photos, blog posts, and telling them that's the kind of content you have on Facebook versus a professional services tab that you're offering on LinkedIn. And I also encourage you, like Taproot did here, to really think about visuals. LinkedIn lets you upload JPEGs, videos, slide presentations. Really think about how you can make your page pop. So that's the basics of different kinds of pages on LinkedIn. And I think that a lot of people, already kind of have gotten their feet wet and started using LinkedIn as, an online resume and things like that. But LinkedIn has actually got a powerful suite of products that go overlooked a lot. So really quickly, I just wanted to run through some things that I think you might not have known or seen about LinkedIn. And that I would encourage you to hop onto your profile when we get off this webinar and check out. For one, applications, which I touched upon earlier. So there's an entire library of different applications that you can add. So polls is an example here to be able to poll your LinkedIn audience and connections about, maybe new business ideas that you're thinking of rolling out. WordPress is one of the blog platforms that they integrate with, and you can bring that in. You can host files through Box, and this is just a screenshot I took of the top page. There's many more applications out there, and you'll see this is all under the drop-down menu of More in your LinkedIn. There's a lot of good stuff in that menu, including, not including this, but we'll go back, including answers, skills, and other things that I will show in the next couple slides. Social plugins. This is another way to get your LinkedIn presence across different properties across the web. So these are examples of all the different buttons that you can install on your website, in emails, different places where you're having points of contact with your customer base. So the share button here is a way to, say on your blog, share an article on my LinkedIn account. Recommend is to actually recommend a particular product or service like we were showing on the company page. So what that would be is if on your corporate website, for example, you have your services listed, give an opportunity for your customers to recommend those services as well, and it'll automatically feed into your recommendations on your LinkedIn page. And then this last one is actually a profile snapshot, which I think is pretty cool. I used my profile for the image here, and I know I'm used it a lot throughout this presentation. I was going to use the default one that LinkedIn puts out, but the default profile snapshot that LinkedIn have is some guy named Matthew Weiner, and I thought at this
That was inappropriate at
particular,
this
well,
time.
I thought in this particular time of current events that maybe that was just bad timing to use
Especially in
Matt
social
Weiner.
media.
So I opted to just use my own. But the idea here is that, with this little button you can have on, your blog or your About Me page where someone would actually hover over it and get kind of a preview of your LinkedIn platform, or profile rather. LinkedIn groups, and I mentioned this on the very first slide, both groups and questions are a great way to get out there and establish yourself as a thought leader, as an expert in a certain space. So this is a group that I belong to, social media marketing, and you'll see it's just conversations about business and about relevant topics for those group members. So this is a great opportunity to share a blog post of yours, to share just a great article you were reading and start a discussion around it. And by doing that, you can meet new connections and really build up your profile as well. And you'll notice too on the tabs on the top that you can explore the membership. You can also list jobs to it. So if you're looking for a social media manager, for example, for your job, you can go into these social media specific groups and post job ads to a really targeted audience. And similarly, there's questions, so you can go out there, and I encourage you to both ask and answer questions. It's a great, one of the things that we do in our intro to social media presentations is to tell people with social media, never be afraid to ask questions. One of the great things about social media is that social aspect and this community aspect, and that the experts out there are really actually quite approachable and like to pitch in advice, whether it's to help you out or just to hear themselves talk is kind of a moot point. The point is you can get free information really easily. So if you're trying to figure out what to do on your LinkedIn profile or on anything you're doing online, how to build up your blog, how to build up your email list, go to LinkedIn questions, start that conversation. And go through on the top, you can see advanced answers search and various Q&A browsing options. Go out and see what conversations are already happening that you might be able to contribute to and add your 2 cents. From the news category, LinkedIn Signal is a relatively new feature that's a good way to aggregate for yourself various conversations that are going on in your network. So you can filter by companies, by industries, and by your network to, look into what, say, friends of your friends or connections of your connections are talking about on LinkedIn. And this is a good way in kind of a one-screen snapshot to see news items and conversation topics that are happening in your space that you might want to be involved in. And lastly, I actually just discovered this too, and it's kind of a fun tool, but actually really useful, is the LinkedIn connection timeline. So you can go in, just Google LinkedIn connection timeline. It's off of the LinkedIn site. But essentially, you log in with your profile, and you can kind of like slide through your work history and see where you met certain connections along the way. So this is really great, not only just to kind of like, take a stroll down memory lane, but also when thinking about building up your recommendations, think about who you've worked with in the past. It's possible 10, 15 years ago you worked on a project with somebody that, might have kind of slipped your mind as far as a good potential recommender for you, but you can kind of go back through your whole history with this connection timeline and start identifying people who you can reach out to. And when you do reach out to people to request recommendations, think about how you're doing it. LinkedIn's going to give you a default message saying, like, recommend me. I would suggest that you personalize it and say, hey, I was just stumbled across your profile, thinking about this, project that we worked on. I'm building up my LinkedIn profile. I could really use your help on a recommendation. And not everybody's going to do it, but send out a fair amount, and you'll be surprised at the kind of response that you get, particularly when you point to a particular project or company that you think you did really good work at. And if they agree, then you've got a new recommendation. And lastly, and I wanted to put this in because I realize this is a really short and quick webinar that we're throwing a lot of information your way. One thing that's overlooked about LinkedIn is they have a really robust resources section, different downloadable guides for everything from how to advertise on LinkedIn to how to get the most out of it for your small business. So that's what this screenshot is here. They have a whole video series of guides to small business success. They're each about 5 minutes long. There's probably 7 or 8 of them up there. I'd encourage you to check them out and try and see some good ideas from the experts, the people who actually built this thing. And if you go into resources, and that's also in the More tab on your profile, you'll find a lot more guides that are specific to various ways to really get the most out of LinkedIn. And these are things people, they're there and people don't use them very often. So I would suggest doing so and really, I think that you'll be ahead of the game because you actually invested a little bit of time in learning about all these different resources that are on the back end of LinkedIn. So that's our quick overall summary of LinkedIn and how you can use it for your business. I'd love to answer some questions if we have them. So Jill, you want to check that out?
As always, we are recording this webinar, so anyone who signed on late, we will have it up on our help site on the recorded webinars page. So that should answer a whole bunch of questions that I see in here. If I am the sole employee of my 3 companies, will not having employees on a company page be a disadvantage? Should I not create a company page?
That's a really good question. I think that because there's 3 different companies, I would suggest that you do have a company page for each, and they will, because they'll all be linked to or mentioned in your personal profile. So what you don't want is someone to go find you on your personal profile, see that you work for company X, and then click on company X to find a dead and empty profile. The fact that you don't have employees is probably clear from the type of business that you're in, and you can definitely say in your summary on the company page, sole proprietorship, that so it won't raise any red flags, if you will. But the company page, what you can have there that you can't have on your personal profile is that products and services piece. and really and building and bringing in recommendations for those individual services. And I'm guessing that across those three companies, you're going to have different services and a different kind of customer base, and you're going to want to be able to appeal to each of them. So I would recommend having personal profile and individual company pages for that.
What should you do if someone wants to add you to their network and you don't know them?
That's a personal call. My um, own idea there is if I don't know you, I don't add you. I don't think that, just like with an email list, people who have never heard of me are way less likely to open emails from me. And the same is going to go on LinkedIn. There's people out there who just kind of try and build up their network to have these huge numbers, but then any messaging that's coming their way is lost in their stream. So it's more important for you to have customers who are going to actually see your messaging that you share on LinkedIn. So I would encourage, oh, I mean, it's a personal call again, but I don't think you help yourself out at all by adding completely random contacts on LinkedIn.
Is VR going to add a share function for LinkedIn like you currently do for Facebook and Twitter for newsletters?
Yes.
What a timely question that is.
We have at the end of the month,
No, in a week and a half.
in a week and a half, we have our new social sharing features coming out, which we're all super excited about. We're going to be giving you the ability to insert share options for Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn anywhere into your email. And not only are you going to be able to share it on your own networks, but from within the email, recipients of your email are going to be able to share it with their networks. So and then you're going to be able to track not only your open rates for your emails, but also share rates and see kind of what the viral spread of your messaging is. So keep an eye out for product blog posts and other things out there that will come out in the next week to week and a half explaining the new feature and how to get the most out of it.
There are some posts on the product blog right now
Right.
with a little bit of information about what's coming. But like I said, it's about a week and a half away, so not much longer. Can I create a company profile without creating a personal profile?
No, you can't. And the reason for that is because every company profile needs an admin, somebody who runs that company profile, and that admin has to have a profile of themselves. So, if you really didn't want a personal profile, you could make some sort of anonymous fake profile on LinkedIn to be your admin, but it's going to link back to that, and your company page, rather, will link back to that, so I would highly suggest not taking that route.
You mentioned apps. Can you tell us a little bit more about apps?
So apps are essentially just available plugins to beef up your LinkedIn profile to make it more robust. So apps are generally, there's a few made by LinkedIn, but generally they're third-party applications out there. The few that I pointed to, different blogging platforms like WordPress, Box.net, which is a file hosting thing. So if you have white papers, can be a great thing to host on your LinkedIn profile to give people, more information and a reason to keep interacting with you and a reason to start a discussion with you. So you can use the Box app to host white papers on your profile. So if you go into the More tab and you click on Applications and More Applications, it's essentially a library like your iTunes library or anything else where you can go scroll through and see what apps are out there and which ones make sense for your profile.
And all of these things that you talk about, can you do this with basic LinkedIn, or do you have to purchase an advanced package?
So everything that I showed you today is available to basic free profile, company included. There are a few things, like if you noticed on the slide of emailing connections, uh, where you can search and filter connections. As a basic profile, you can only search first and second connections. If you have a more advanced profile, you can add third connections into that. But the functionality of everything that we looked at today is available to basic members.
Sorry, there's a lot of questions. I'm just trying to find. If you just Googled a company and their LinkedIn company profile comes up, would you need to sign into LinkedIn to access the full company profile, or could you see it from Google?
So company pages
Or
are
from clicking through Google, sorry.
company pages are public. So if you are not signed in to LinkedIn, you can still view a complete company page. What you can't do if you're not signed in to LinkedIn is look at personal pages if that person hasn't made a public profile. So LinkedIn allows you to have a public profile that's available to the public, and you can decide how much information you share within that, but a company page is completely viewable via Google search, whether that person is logged into LinkedIn or not.
Does VR offer partnerships, affiliations with companies such as marketing consultancies that may have clients in need of VR's email services? We in fact do. We have a part. We actually offer both. We have a partner product. So if there's people who need to use email marketing and you want to be our partner and offer that to them, if you go to partners.verticalresponse.com, you can find out more about our partner products and the different things that we offer. We can do white label. We can do co-brand. There's various levels in all of those. We also offer affiliate memberships as well. So if you want to just recommend people and get credit for them using our system, you can do that as well. And there's more information about that on our website as well.
And it's partners.verticalresponse.com?
Yes. I am an independent distributor for a company that has a lot of products. Will posting pictures and such of those products be an issue on LinkedIn?
To my knowledge, there is no limitation to the amount of products that you can add to your company page under that products and services tab. But from a kind of marketing strategy standpoint, I'd put a little bit of thought into it because each one is going to have its own little area. The more you put is the further your customer is going to have to scroll down. So a fair amount of those will get lost in the shuffle, so to speak. So if you do want to put a lot up, you can, but really make sure that your primary products are on the top. Or, have say 5 or 6 on there and shuffle them in and out when they might have seasonal relevance or something like that, and really just highlight the products that you want the most traction with at that point.
I've noticed that my company profile has been created by a third party and it has lots of errors in it. How do I go about changing it?
Company profile has been created by a third party. That
sounds sketchy to me.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to create a new company. Well, I don't know if the person asking this question is the, you know, owner of the company versus an employee. So the owner might have contracted out building up a company page, or it could be something where LinkedIn just created like a placeholder because no official company page has been created. So I would try to go in and actually, if you are the owner and you want control over that page, try and create your own page and replace on your profile what it's linking to. If it says that that company's already taken, I would contact LinkedIn directly and say that you have ownership over that property.
Somebody's asking a question. I'm just going to point them in another direction. It says, please explain options for integration of vertical response with Salesforce. That's actually a little bit separate from this particular webinar, but we do have a weekly demo on Wednesday mornings if you want to see how the integration works with vertical response and Salesforce. Also, if you go to our help site, help.verticalresponse.com, there's a tab for Salesforce, and there's some more information about using Salesforce and some videos there as well. So hopefully that answers a little bit. If you're an employee with a domain name from that particular company, can you go in and edit it? So I think that kind of goes back to what you were just talking about for that issue with the company profile.
Yeah, and that's one thing that reminds me on a company page. I think this might have been, there is a setting on a company page where anybody who indicates that they're an employee of your company and is using a yourcompany.com address, that LinkedIn enables them to edit that page. So if you are, particularly if you're a larger size company with a lot of employees and you only want a handful of them with admin capability, you have to go in and actually set that in your admin section of your company page, who you want to be able to go in and edit.
What about unique content? Does posting things on LinkedIn and your blog dilute the information that you're posting?
Um, in the case of a blog, I don't think so. As I had kind of hinted at earlier with Twitter, there could be too much sharing, like
Mhm.
if you're just constantly mimicking your Twitter with LinkedIn. But a blog is something that's not updated as often. It's also much more thoughtful and valuable information. And you probably have different audiences. And both with your blog and with your LinkedIn profile, that's a good opportunity to, say, on LinkedIn, bring some of your connections over to your blog and get them to sign up for your newsletter and have different touch points to create relationships. And because of the kind of value add of blog posts, I think that sharing them across multiple channels is not going to hurt you in that case.
Yeah, we talk about this in most of the social media webinars because people do wonder about this particular thing. But different people access information in different ways. Some people might be accessing information from Twitter or Facebook or your blog, but they may not necessarily be hitting all of them. So by having the information of your blog on LinkedIn, you're probably not diluting your audience.
And you also want to you think about who you, like I said, more likely than not, you have a different audience on different places. Some people, do most of their online activity on Facebook versus LinkedIn. So,
Mm.
and those are going to be unique audiences with unique interests. So you can tailor the content for that across those audiences.
So you said that you have to have a personal profile for a company page. When the person who's the admin leaves the company, can you switch the profile to another personal profile, or do you have to start from scratch, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so the admin capability can be turned off and on. So making somebody an admin of the page is not making them the owner of the page. So if whoever, if there's a changing of the guard, when that new person comes on board, as long as they have a LinkedIn profile and they have your company domain address as one of their email contacts through their LinkedIn profile, then you can go ahead and turn their admin rights on and turn them off for the former employee.
And on that same kind of line, there's a couple of questions about this. Um, how do you remove people that show up as employees who aren't? Either they're past employees or they've never worked for your company and you're not quite sure how they're showing up as an employee. Is there a way to remove people who show up as employees?
Yes. Well, so former employees, no. I mean, that's part of their career history, and it's part of their resume, so it's gonna link that they have. But that won't show up on your company page under current employees unless they haven't updated their the fact that they left the company. Uh, but you can actually go into personal profiles as the admin for a company and go to the part of their profile where they say they work at the company and confirm that they don't or submit a complaint through LinkedIn admin.
Is there any difference between setting up a page for a company versus setting up a page for a nonprofit? This might come up later
Yes,
today.
we have a webinar this afternoon for social media, email marketing and social media for nonprofits, but we won't be talking about LinkedIn. Uh, Functionally, no, there is no difference between, it's not like Facebook where you've got a cause page versus a company page versus a celebrity page. LinkedIn company page, they're going to consider nonprofits companies. In fact, that example of Taproot Foundation I showed earlier, they're a nonprofit. So essentially, your products or services, you would just update as to, the various initiatives and work you're doing as a nonprofit. You would put under as a service.
Let's see. We're going to take one more question because it's getting late. And let me figure this one out here. What are the biggest benefit? Oh wait, whoops, wrong one. We just answered that question, I think. What might a supervisor be hesitant about when deciding to begin a company profile or group, and how can we get around that?
Um, I mean, like anything else on social media, oftentimes executive leadership gets, for lack of a better word, afraid
Of social media.
of kind of the idea that a conversation is happening out of their control, that there is less moderation surrounding, and really the only or the primary answer to that is tough cookies. The deal is, and this is not only for LinkedIn but social media in general, the conversation is happening whether you're part of it or not. Negative or positive, people are having these conversations about your business and about your brand. And with that in mind, you want to be part of it. You want to be able to put your input in there, and be able to present uh, your side of any conversation. So, the way to really lead to buy-in. Of course, there are things like ROI that come into play with social media and marketing efforts, but at the end of the day, it's really about having a presence where your customers are, and particularly in a B2B or professional services environment, those conversations are happening on LinkedIn, and your competition is already there, and you want to be there as well.
Okay, so I know there's still a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we've kind of run out of time for the questions. Um, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Hopefully this answered some of your questions about LinkedIn.